The villagers thought they were saving themselves, but the river never forgave them. Umueri was a kind of village that trusted the river more than words. The river ran along the edge of the land, wide and restless. Its water brown during the rains and calm like glass during dry season. It fed their farms, washed their clothes, carried their prayers and sometimes their fear. No one in Umueri joked with that river. Children were warned from birth, do not insult the water. Life in Umueri was simple. People woke with the sun, walked until their backs ached, and slept with tired satisfactions. Storms came and went like visitors, some gentle, some angry. But the storm that came that night was different. The sky cracked open without warning. Thunder roared like drums beaten by unseen hands. Rain poured so hard it erased footpaths and swallowed voices. Even the river seemed to swell with rage, slapping its banks violently. That was the night Amarachi went into labor. She was not meant to give birth by the river, but fate does not ask permission. Amarachi had lost her husband 2 weeks ago. He was bitten by a poisonous snake on his way to the farm. She had been returning from her mother's hut that night when the rain seized her suddenly, sharp, cruel, and deep. By the time help arrived, the rain had trapped them between the flooded paths and the roaring river. There was no shelter, no midwife, only fear and water. The women screamed instructions over the storm. Amarachi screamed in pain. The river washed. When the baby finally slid into the world, the rain slowed. And then something strange happened. The child did not cry. No wail, no scream, no struggle. The women froze. A baby that does not cry is never a good sign. One woman slapped the child gently on the back. Nothing. Another whispered prayers under her breath. Still nothing. Panic rose in their chests like smoke. Then the river changed. The violent water suddenly stilled. The wind died down as if someone had commanded it. The rain softened into a quiet drizzle. The river, moments ago wide and angry, became calm, too calm. The baby opened her eyes, and that was when she cried. A strong cry, a living cry, a cry that cut through the night like a promise. The women stepped back slowly, fear clawing over their skin. "This is not ordinary," one of them whispered. By morning, the whole village knew. Elders gathered by the river bank, their walking sticks pressed into the wet earth. They listened as the women told the story again and again. How the storm paused, how the river calmed, how the child waited for the water before she breathed. No one argued, no one laughed. An old elder finally spoke, his voice shaking. "The river has touched this child." Silence followed. To be touched by the river was not a blessing people prayed for, and not a cause they wished either. It meant the child did not fully belong to humans alone. That same day, the child was named Mirioma, meaning good water. As the river flowed quietly beside the village, no one noticed the way its surface rippled softly, as if it was pleased. And deep within Umueri, something ancient had been awakened. Mirioma grew the way the river flowed, slowly, silently, and without asking permission. By the time she was old enough to walk, the women of Umueri had begun to notice the first sign that this child was different. Whenever her mother carried her to the riverbank, the water behaved strangely. It no longer rushed or slapped angrily against the shore. Instead, it softened, It listened. When Miriama was 3, she fell into the river. It happened on a quiet afternoon when the sun was high and the village was calm. A sharp cry went up as a small body slipped from the muddy edge and disappeared beneath the surface. Women dropped their calabashes, men shouted her name. But before anyone could jump in, the child floated. Not stiff like the drowned, not struggling like the afraid. She floated as though invisible hands held her up. Miriam laughed instead of crying. And from that day on, fear settled in the hearts of the villagers like an unwanted guest. As Miriam grew older, strange things followed her steps. Fish gathered where she washed her feet. When she fetched water, the clay pot never cracked. During the dry season, when the river shrank and exposed its angry stones, the water around her remained deep and clear. Children stopped playing with her. At first, it was small things. Whispers, pointed fingers, mothers calling their children indoors whenever Miriam approached. Then it became louder. Do not follow her to the river, they warned. She is not like us. Miriam noticed, but she did not understand. She would sit alone on the riverbank, knees drawn to her chest, watching other children laugh from a distance. Sometimes her eyes filled with tears, but before they could fall, the river would stir up, rippling softly as if comforting her. And the tears would stop. At night, when the village slept, Miriam dreamed of water. Not drowning water, not dark water, but warm, glowing water that whispered her name in voices too old to belong to humans. Her mother, Amarachi, watched her closely. There were days Amarachi wanted to run, away from Umueri, away from the river, away from the glowing fear in people's eyes. But where could she go? How do you flee from something that follows your child's shadow? So she stayed, and the river stayed too, watching, waiting, loving the girl in a way humans never could. The day everything changed did not begin with thunder. It began like any other day in Umueri. The sun rose gently over Umueri, and the village stirred awake with the sounds of pestles, roasters, and murmured greetings. Nothing in the air warned that something sacred was about to be revealed. Miriam was returning from the stream with her clay pot balanced carefully on her head when it happened. A group of older girls stood near the path, their voices sharp with laughter. As Miriam approached, one of them stepped forward and blocked her way. "River child," the girl said, her lips curling. "Does the river greet you before we do?" The others laughed. Miriam lowered her eyes and tried to walk past. But another girl shoved her hard. The clay pot slipped and shattered against a stone. Water slipped across the ground like a sudden wound. "See," someone scoffed. "Even water follows her. And you call yourself a human?" Miriam felt something break inside her. Not her pot, not her pride, but something softer and deeper. She did not shout, she did not argue. She turned and ran. Her feet carried her to the only place that had never rejected her. The river. She knelt at the bank, her shoulders shaking. Tears fell freely now, dropping into the water one after another. "I did nothing wrong," she whispered. "Why did they hate me?" For a long time, nothing happened. Then the wind shifted. The surface of the river trembled, not with anger, but with attention. The water closest to her feet began to glow faintly, as though sunlight had sunk beneath its skin. A soft current brushed her toes, gentle as a mother's hand. Miriam gasped. A voice rose, not loud, not human, but clear. "Child of water," it said. You are not alone. Miriam froze, her breath caught between her fear and wonder. I only wanted to belong, she whispered. The river sighed. Some hearts are too deep for shallow places. Behind the trees, unseen by Miriam, an old man stood frozen in place. He had gone to check his fishing traps and had followed the sound of voices. What he saw made his legs weak and his spirit tremble. The water moves without wind. The gate spoke to it like a king. The elder crossed himself with trembling fingers. By nightfall, whispers moved through Umueri, faster than fire in dry grass. The river has spoken, and it has chosen its child openly. From that day on, fear no longer hid behind silence. It began to demand answers. Fear does not arrive screaming. It comes quietly, wearing the face of concern. Not long after the river answered Miriam, small misfortune began to touch Umueri. At first, no one spoke of them aloud. A yam barn collapsed before harvest. A goat wandered into the forest and never returned. A child woke up with a fever that herbs refused to cool. These things happened, the elder said, but fear is patient. When the river shrank earlier than usual that season, murmurs grew louder. Women at the stream spoke in lowered voices. Men lingered longer at the village square, counting troubles like debts. And always, someone would whisper her name, Miriam. The elder, who had witnessed the river speak, kept silent for as long as he could. But secrets rot when buried too deeply. So one evening, after palm wine loosened his tongue, he spoke. I saw her, he confessed. The river listened to her like a child listens to its mother. The words fell heavily into the night. By the next morning, Umueri had decided something was wrong. Miriam felt it immediately. Greetings stopped reaching her. When she passed, conversations ended immediately. Even the air around her seemed tighter, heavier. Her mother, Amarachi, noticed too. Stay away from the river for now, my child, she pleaded one morning, holding Miriam's wrists tightly. Let people forget. Miriam nodded, though confusion clouded her eyes. She obeyed for days, sitting quietly in their compound, helping with chores, speaking little. But trouble did not stop. The child with fever died. That night, the village cried together. By morning, grief had sharpened into anger. The river is angry, someone said. No, another replied. The river is fed. The oracle was summoned. Wrapped in white chalk and silence, he listened as the elder spoke. He threw his cowries slowly, carefully. When he finally raised his hand, his voice was low and uneasy. There is a child who stands between words, he said. What belongs to spirit must not be claimed fully by humans. The elders exchanged glances. Does she bring misfortune? One asked. The oracle did not answer directly. Instead, he warned. Do not offend what watches you. But fear hears only what it wants. So, that evening, a meeting was called. One, Miriam and her mother were not invited to. As torches burned low and shadows danced on the walls, a dangerous thought took shape in the minds of men. If the river loved the girl so deeply, then perhaps giving her back was the only way to save the village. Night fell heavily on Umueri, thick with the smell of smoke and fear. The elders gathered in the obi long after women and children had been sent indoors. No drums sounded, no song softened the air. Only the open fire and the restless shifting of men who knew they were standing at the edge of something irreversible. At the center of the gathering sat the oldest elder, his back bent by years and memory. "We cannot continue like this," he said. "The land is turning against us." Another elder struck the ground with his staff. "The river has chosen her. Are we stronger than the spirits?" Silence followed. Then someone spoke the words no one had wanted to say aloud. "We should return the girl." The fire popped sharply, as if in protest. "What of her mother?" a voice asked, weaker than the rest. "She will mourn," another replied. "It's better one mother's tears than the tears of a whole village." The oracle sat among them, his eyes lowered. When they turned to him, seeking comfort, he did not look up. He asked for guidance. He said quietly, not permission. Still, the decision was made. They agreed it would be done at dawn, before the village woke fully, before doubt could find its voice. The girl would be taken to the river under the excuse of a cleansing ritual. No blood, no struggle. The spirits would understand. At home, unaware of the fate being shaped for her, Miriama lay awake. The river was restless that night. Its murmur crept into her dreams, louder than usual. Uneasy, she turned in her sleep, her chest tight with a feeling she could not name. In the darkness, her mother stared. Amarachi rose and stepped outside, listening to the distant sound of flowing water. For the first time since Miriama's birth, the river did not feel comforting. It felt afraid, and somewhere between fear and love, Umueri sealed a promise it would soon regret. Dawn came too quietly. There were no birds, no playful breeze. Even the sun rose pale, as though it did not wish to witness what was about to happen. Miriam woke to her mother's hand, shaking her gently. "Get up, my child," Amarachi said, forcing a smile that never reached her eyes. "The elders have asked for a cleansing by the river. It will be quick." Miriam sat up slowly. Her chest felt tight, her dreams still clinging to her like wet clothes. She had dreamed of water pulling away from her, calling her name with fear in its voice. As they walked through the village, people avoided their eyes. Doors closed softly. Even the children who once mocked her now stared at the ground. At the river bank, the elders waited. They stood in a half circle, staffs planted firmly into the earth, faces hard with decision. The oracle was there too, chalk marking his skin, his eyes refusing to meet Miriam's. Amarachi's hands tightened around her daughter's arm. "What kind of cleansing needs so many men?" she asked, her voice breaking. No one answered. That was when Miriam understood. She looked from face to face. Men who had watched her grow. Women who had once carried her as a baby. Not one of them spoke her name. Slowly, she stepped forward. "If I go to the river," she asked softly, "will the village be at peace?" The question pierced deeper than any scream could have. Amarachi cried out, clutching her daughter, but strong hands held her back. The elders murmured prayers, convincing themselves that this was mercy. Miriam removed her wrapper carefully and folded it on a stone. She did not struggle, she did not curse them. She turned to her mother one last time. "Do not follow me," she said gently. "It will hurt you more." Then she stepped into the river. The water that had always been calm around her began to rise. Not violently, but protectively. The current wrapped around her legs, her waist, her chest, like arms welcoming a long-lost child. The sky darkened. Wind rushed through the trees. The river swelled, glowing faintly beneath its surface. Shapes moved within it, old, watching, awake. The elders staggered backward in fear. As the water closed over Miriam's head, the river roared, not in anger but in grief. And when the water settled again, Miriam was gone. No blood stained the shore, no body returned. Only the river remained wider, deeper, and very much alive. Amarachi's scream tore through Umueri, echoing across the river. And for the first time, the villagers understood. They had not offered a sacrifice. They had returned a daughter to where she had always belonged. For 3 days after Miriamas disappeared, Umueri waited. They waited for the river to calm completely. They waited for the land to heal. They waited for peace to return. Instead, silence came. The river no longer sang in the mornings. Its surface lay too smooth, too still, like a face that refused to show emotion. Fishermen cast their nets and put them back empty. Women fetched water that tasted flat and lifeless, as though something essential had been taken from it. Then the dreams began. Men woke up gasping for air, claiming they had stood at the river bank calling Miriam's name, only for the water to turn away from them. Women dreamed of a young girl walking beneath the river's surface, her hair flowing freely, her eyes glowing softly. But whenever they reached out, the water rose between them. Amarachi did not dream. She sat by the river every day, her wrapper soaked, her eyes hollow. She spoke to the water as if speaking to a stubborn child. "Bring back my daughter," she begged. "You loved her. Return her, please." The river answered only once. At dusk on the 7th day, the water near the bank shimmered. Amarachi felt warmth brush her fingers. A familiar voice, softer than memory, whispered, "Mother, do not call me back." Amarachi fell forward, weeping as the river pulled gently away. That same night, the oracle finally spoke plainly. "You did not save yourselves," he told the elders. "You gave away the bridge between worlds. She was not your cause. She was your covering." Fear spread through Umueri like harmattan fire. And then, during a sudden storm, weeks later, a traveler fell into the river upstream. As the villagers ran helplessly along the bank, the water rose and lowered him gently onto the shore, alive. Those who witnessed it swore they saw a young woman's shadow beneath the surface, her hand guiding him. She did not look towards the village. She did not speak. The river had not taken Miriam to punish Umueri. It had taken her to keep her. And in the water's quiet depths, the girl began to change, not in something cruel, but in something that no longer belonged to humans at all. Years passed. Umueri did not disappear, but it was never the same again. The river remained generous to strangers, but distant to those who lived beside it. During droughts, travelers found water waiting for them. Children from other villages who wanted to be drawn were lifted back gently to the shore. Fishermen from far places returned home with full nets and stories they could not explain. But Umueri received only enough to survive, never abundance. The elders grew old, carrying a quiet shame. They warned their children in lowered voices and taught them new values. Do not mock what you do not understand. Do not fear what loves differently. Some children are borrowed, not owned. At dawn, when the mist hovered low over the water, villagers sometimes saw her, a young woman standing where the river met the shore. Her hair flowed like moving water. Her skin glowed softly. Untouched by time, she looked no older than the day she stepped into the river. They called her name only in their hearts. Miriam never answered. She belonged to the river now, to its depth, its mood, its mercy. She guarded the lost. She protected the innocent. She listened to prayers spoken with humility. But she did not return home. And so, the story of Umueri became a warning told beside fires and beneath moonlight. A reminder carved into memory rather than stone. That love, when misunderstood, can turn into betrayal. That fear can make enemies of blessing. And that sometimes the spirits love their chosen ones more deeply than humans ever learn to. Hi besties! We have finally come to the end of today's tale. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you have not done so. And see you in our next tale. Bye!